Chapter 232. Before the Hydra had even arrived, a foul stench accompanied by a powerful presence had already pounced in their direction. Even through the three demons, Han Shuo still couldn't see the Hydra's figure, but he could still roughly guess its location through the strange changes in the wind. As the nine-headed serpent flew over, some of the clear water in the surroundings were instantly polluted, turning it into a stinky place that resembled a stinking ditch. The moist ground also slowly became abnormally dry, taking on a dark brown color. It looked like it had all been affected by the Hydra's power. Han Shuo summoned the demon's lair edge and had already made preparations with Gilbert as the Hydra approached. They planned to launch an attack when the Hydra got close and give it an unforgettable blow. The stench in the air grew stronger and stronger. Han Shuo, who had been adjusting his breathing with his eyes closed, felt a brief dizziness when he first breathed in the stench, but his body quickly returned to normal after filtering it with his magical yuan. As a member of the evil dragon tribe, Gilbert's body was strong and tough, and he could also spit out acidic poison. The resistance of a dragon's body was strong enough that the stench of poison wouldn't be able to affect him before the poison landed on his body. Suddenly, the Hydra's moving figure seemed to stop beside a towering tree. The direction of the wind was stable and there were no abnormal changes, as if the Hydra had been stationed there. Han Shuo was surprised and was wondering why the Hydra hadn't approached when 4 streams of dark brown liquid sprayed out like fountains, shooting straight at the tree that Han Shuo and Gilbert were sitting on. A strong stench instantly filled the air. The stench was abnormally unpleasant, and when the magical beasts in the surroundings inhaled the stench, their bodies stiffened and they became motionless. The higher-level harpies and the 2 windblade wolves all fled in terror when they smelled the stench, not daring to stay where they were. It was obvious that they knew that there was a terrifying danger in the surroundings. Cursing in a low voice, Han Shuo and Gilbert immediately moved. Gilbert's body leaped and landed on a tree further away, while Han Shuo soared into the air and stood there. During this process, Han Shuo took the opportunity to chant necromancy magic. Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie appeared at the same time, working together like heaven and earth. Little Skull was at Han Shuo's side, while the Earth Elite Zombie hid in the ground. The tree that Han Shuo and Gilbert had stopped at was washed by the 4 streams of dark brown liquid. The branches and leaves trembled violently, and all the lush green leaves and branches withered in an extremely short amount of time. The towering ancient tree looked as though it had experienced tens of thousands of years of withering, with only a withered old tree trunk remaining. Hydra, you've finally come out. Han Shuo laughed coldly in the air and attacked at the same time as Little Skull. The bone dagger and demon's lair edge whistled as they flew out, targeting the concealed Hydra. At the same time, Dark Dragon Gilbert's loud shouts sounded from the side. The human form of Gilbert gradually grew larger in a ball of black light, finally transforming into the form of a dark dragon. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws at the Hydra, shouting in a deep voice, "Despicable Hydra, you'll pay the price." The concealed Hydra obviously hadn't expected that Han Shuo and Gilbert would be able to see through its tracks. Before it could react, Han Shuo's demon's lair edge and bone dagger had already struck its body. A sharp cry tore through the silent sky. The injured Hydra could no longer hide its enormous body. The body of the Hydra that was entrenched on the towering tree was finally completely exposed in front of Han Shuo and Gilbert. At this moment, the 2 long necks of the Hydra were dripping with fresh blood. The other 7 heads shook their heads and waved their tails. The towering tree that it was entrenched in seemed to be unable to withstand the Hydra's painful struggle. After a loud creak, it suddenly broke and collapsed, bringing the Hydra's body down with it. At this moment, a huge ravine suddenly split open on the brown ground. An earth-shaking sound came from the depths of the earth. There seemed to be a terrifying danger waiting for the Hydra to fall. As a rank-surpassing magical beast, the 9-headed Hydra naturally possessed the ability to fly. Its massive body swayed unsteadily due to the pain as it gradually descended. However, when one of the snake heads accidentally saw that the ground below had suddenly split open into a huge ravine, the 9-headed snake was scared out of its wits. It hurriedly and continuously struggled. In the end, its swaying body actually magically stopped in the void and slowly flew into the distance. In the face of the threat of death, the Hydra's struggle with all its might seemed to be effective. However, the attack from the ground wasn't just limited to that. The Hydra had just flown a short distance when it suddenly discovered that several sharp mounds of earth had risen from the ground and were rushing towards its body. In that moment, the Hydra was incomparably vexed. It hadn't expected that its ambush this time would lead to such a situation. According to its original plan, after getting close to Han Shuo and Gilbert, it could use its highly toxic venom to subdue the Dragon Knight Han Shuo through the spread of the poisonous smoke, and then take care of the little black dragon that was a rank lower than it. Unfortunately, Han Shuo, who had diligently trained in demonic arts, didn't fall for the attack of the poisonous smoke as it had hoped. The appearance of the little skull and the Earth elite zombie further boosted Han Shuo's strength and completely destroyed the Hydra's plan. The 9 snake heads suddenly shook, their slender necks swaying continuously. The few mounds that the Earth elite zombie had created were blocked by the venom that the snake heads had spat out, and the ferocious impact hindered the power of the mounds. During this process, the Hydra's body gradually rose, and as soon as it dodged the Earth elite zombie's mound attack, it frantically flew towards the pool of water that it had come from. A thick stream of magma flame was abnormally glaring in the pitch-black night sky as it abruptly crashed into one of the snake heads. A ghastly cry rang out, and the Hydra's enormous body stumbled as it fled. Some of the surrounding trees that passed by snapped under the impact of its enormous body. Some of the magical creatures in the surroundings fled in panic, fleeing as far as they could. Waha, a rank 2 fellow still has to run. Gilbert's voice rang out in the night sky as his enormous body moved quickly, carrying Han Shuo and the little skull on his back as he chased after the Hydra at a moderate pace. The fleeing Hydra destroyed all the towering trees that stood in its way, and just as Gilbert was about to catch up, it suddenly jumped into the pool of water that it had come from. The originally clear water of the pool seemed to have been immediately polluted, quickly turning into a quagmire that smelled like a gutter. When it had escaped from the pool, the water had still been clear, but now that it had changed after entering, it meant that the Hydra could no longer control its power, most likely due to its injuries. As soon as it fell into the quagmire, the Hydra caused a huge commotion, stirring up the surrounding mud and spreading a foul stench in all directions. "Honored Master, leave the rest to me. You can just watch from above, I'm very familiar with this kind of place." Gilbert laughed heartily. When Han Shuo had first met Gilbert, he had been hiding in a quagmire, using the advantage of the quagmire to confront the Dark Elves. It was obvious that he was very used to fighting and hiding in this kind of place. Now that the Hydra had been injured, plus Han Shuo was watching from above, and Gilbert had an astonishing resistance to poison, Han Shuo wasn't worried about his safety. "Alright, go down. If you can't hold on any longer, come out or scream." Han Shuo nodded, agreeing with Gilbert's actions. With a wild laugh, Dark Dragon Gilbert's enormous body flipped over and fell into the mud with a plop. He was like an enormous loach as he started to sink deeper into the mud. For a moment, the quagmire set off a huge commotion. Gilbert had obviously found the Hydra at the bottom of the quagmire and started fighting. With the quagmire as the center, the earth shook, and the towering trees shook violently. All the magical creatures, big and small, were startled by this huge commotion and fled in panic. It was as if a bomb had been thrown into the center of the quagmire. Huge pillars of mud shot out from the quagmire in all directions with a loud rumble. The quagmire had turned into a terrifying whirlpool, constantly stirring up everything. From time to time, a few of the Hydra's heads or Gilbert's enormous tail would appear above the quagmire. Looking down from above, Han Shuo discovered that Gilbert and the Hydra's bodies were entangled together, rolling and grinding in the quagmire. Arg! Suddenly Gilbert's extremely lewd cries came from within the quagmire. Then, something that left Han Shuo dumbfounded happened. The entangled Hydra and Gilbert slowly surfaced from the quagmire, their bodies tightly entwined. It didn't look like they were fighting, but more like they were intimate. Gilbert's thick tail and sharp claws were constantly touching the Hydra's body like a human hand. The Hydra, which had been struggling fiercely to escape from the dark dragon's entanglement, wrapped its 9 slender necks tighter and tighter around the dark dragon. Streaks of black light had unknowingly wrapped around the 2 super-rank magical beasts that were entangled with each other. The bodies of the 2 enormous creatures slowly shrunk, gradually turning into a man and a woman who were entangled with each other. And they were naked humans tightly hugging each other. Chapter 233. Han Shuo stood high up in the sky, dumbfounded as he looked at the changes below. For a moment, he was stunned, and his entire person froze. Gilbert and the Hydra had become 2 naked mud men entangled together. The original battle had actually turned into another form of battle. Moreover, the battle was in full swing, and the waves were roaring incessantly. Han Shuo was greatly surprised as he watched. The race of black dragons were lascivious, and every Hydra was a female. They were not good birds, and had always been synonymous with obscenity. These 2 creatures could turn from a battle into a battle. As expected, they were very powerful, and it directly shocked Han Shuo. The 2 mud people were entangled with each other and rolled around in the mud. Because their bodies were covered in mud, it was impossible to see their original appearances. Only the curvaceous body of the Hydra was able to distinguish the characteristics of a woman. The lewd Hydra had big breasts and plump buttocks, and was entangled with the black dragon. They were in the midst of intense copulation, and the sound of intense panting was incessant, resounding in the quiet night sky, stirring one's soul. Han Shuo, who was watching excitedly, felt that it was unimaginable. Suddenly, he felt someone tugging at the corner of his clothes. He couldn't help but look back, and saw the little skull with 7 bone spurs flashing. The little skull's purple demon eye shone brightly, and it stretched out a white bone claw to point at the black dragon and Hydra who were engaged in the act below. It asked Han Shuo, "What are they doing?" Han Shuo, the little skull tugged at the corner of Han Shuo's clothes again, and the purple light in its purple demon eye flowed. It seemed to be very confused, as if it couldn't understand what was happening. It sent another message to ask Han Shuo. The black dragon is conquering it. Children shouldn't ask so many questions. Han Shuo couldn't argue with it, and so he gave a strange smile. Half of the Earth elite zombie's body was buried in the ground at some unknown time. He waved his 2 arms wildly, looking at the 2 people in the quagmire in great bewilderment. He seemed to be considering whether or not he should approach and attack. That quagmire was very wide and contained a large amount of poisonous liquid. If the Earth elite zombie rushed inside, he wouldn't be able to fully utilize his abilities. Adding to that, the current situation was very strange. Han Shuo hastily used his consciousness to stop the Earth elite zombie's movements. Gradually, the 2 people who were originally above the quagmire slowly fell into it and disappeared from Han Shuo's sight. However, the huge movement in the quagmire did not disappear with it. Han Shuo knew that this lecherous dragon and lecherous snake's great battle didn't stop when the figure disappeared. It just moved to the bottom of the quagmire. Seeing that he couldn't find anything, Han Shuo descended from the sky and landed beside the Earth elite zombie. He patted the Earth elite zombie's shoulder and praised, "Well done." Previously, the Earth elite zombie hid in the ground and used his manipulation of the power of the Earth to pose a huge threat to the Hydra. That kind of ability to tear the Earth into ravines made Han Shuo very excited. This meant that the Earth elite zombie had spent some time with the little skull and had indeed developed a very good combat awareness. Up until now, the Hydra should be unable to pose any threat to Han Shuo. Therefore, after Han Shuo landed and praised the Earth elite zombie, he once again chanted an incantation and sent the little skull and the Earth elite zombie back to their home. Then Han Shuo flew to a towering tree on the side of the quagmire and sat cross-legged on the trunk. He silently adjusted his breathing while paying attention to the movements in the quagmire. During this process, a huge rumbling sound came from afar, as if a huge monster was passing by nearby. Han Shuo, who was silently adjusting his breathing, immediately separated a demon and flew towards the source of the sound to find out what was going on. A green cyclops, 8 to 9 meters tall, with muscles all over his body that were as hard as rock, strode forward with his two thick legs that were like towering stone pillars. He was hurrying along at high speed. Every step he took was accompanied by an earthquake, as if a mountain was collapsing. Along the way, all the trees and shrubs were flattened. The ground seemed to have been bulldozed, becoming flat and tidy. Even some of the hard rocks were crushed under his feet. This was enough to prove that this green Cyclops had a super strength that could rival a god. The Cyclops seemed to be a bit anxious. His footsteps were extremely hurried, causing all the magical beasts in the surroundings to retreat and leave their nests to make a path for him. The huge rumbling sound gradually faded into the distance. Han Shuo was astonished. He was shocked by the Cyclops that had just left. Such a huge fellow with a body as hard as rock definitely contained terrifying power. Even the Hydra and Gilbert would have a headache if they encountered such a fellow. Just as Han Shuo was thinking this, a huge commotion came from within the quagmire. A whirlpool spun in the center of the quagmire as brown mud arrows shot out. It was as if a lewd dragon and a lewd snake had reached a critical juncture. As expected, a huge howl came from within after a while. Then, the smelly quagmire miraculously began to clear up in an extremely short amount of time. The muddy water gradually sank, and with the sound of bubbles, clear water gradually appeared. Gilbert's naked figure broke out of the quagmire. His muscles were black and shiny, and the mud that had covered his body had been washed away. As soon as he broke out of the quagmire, Gilbert laughed heartily, his voice filled with indescribable excitement and pride. He lowered his head to look at the gurgling water below and couldn't help but laugh lewdly. He seemed extremely arrogant and savage. "Honorable Master, you are a living god in this world. You possess miracles that transcend all common sense. You have allowed your humble servant to possess a supreme skill that will allow him to dominate the Black Dragon City in the future. I will always praise you. Oh, you are so great." After Gilbert leapt out of the water, he spat out a string of flattery. His tone was sincere, his emotions were passionate, and his words were mushy. This was more than any of his previous flattery. It was obvious that Gilbert was truly excited and ecstatic at this moment. This wasn't just pure flattery. "What, did you use that supreme skill?" Han Shuo chuckled oddly as he looked at Gilbert with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. Nodding repeatedly, Gilbert was truly excited. He exclaimed loudly, "Of course, it's just too miraculous. I've taken care of that female snake. She can't even move now." "What's the exact situation?" Han Shuo started and then asked Gilbert in a low, furtive voice, as if he was afraid that the Hydra in the quagmire would hear him. With a low, vulgar chuckle, Gilbert said softly and proudly, "Honorable Master, I've already stolen a bit of her essence in the process. I can feel that my body has received unimaginable benefits. Will this Hydra pose a threat to us again?" Han Shuo nodded in understanding, then frowned and asked calmly, "Don't worry, I definitely won't. Moreover, I have a way to subdue her. In that case, you will have another powerful helper in the future, Master." Gilbert made a solemn vow. The smile on his face was perhaps obscene. "Well, since you're so confident, I'll believe you this time. I hope you won't let me down." After seeing the magic of the Hydra, Han Shuo thought about it and chose to believe Gilbert, nodding and agreeing to his proposal. "Then, let's leave here for a while. She needs a long time to rest now. When she recovers, I'll come back to find her." Gilbert looked at the clear pool reluctantly and said, "All right, I just saw a Cyclops rushing in one direction. Let's go and see what's going on." Han Shuo thought of the performance of the Cyclops and said to Gilbert thoughtfully, "The Cyclops is said to be the servant of the gods. It is said that they have the magical ability to forge weapons and find special ores. They like to eat people, have strong bodies, and have a stubborn personality. Their living habits are somewhat similar to dwarves. Another legend says that the Cyclops is actually a kind of dwarf, but it has an incredibly huge body, including terrible destructive power, and lives in huge buildings. The Cyclops has a rock-hard body. It is not known if it is because of this body, but they have the instinct to find some strange ores. Some rare ores can be found by them. This magical instinct makes all alchemists envious. Just now, the Cyclops was rushing so anxiously, Han Shuo naturally thought of his instinctive characteristics. He didn't know if he had found any special metal ores and was rushing to dig them out. Maybe this Cyclops has found a good place or is planning to mine some special ores. Gilbert clearly knew the instinctive characteristics of the Cyclops and couldn't help but whisper. Nodding, Han Shuo said with a smile, "Let's go and see. I happen to need some materials for refining. Let's see if this Cyclops can help me find something good." As soon as the words fell, Han Shuo and Gilbert quickly followed the path that the Cyclops had taken. Chapter 234. The enormous Cyclops displayed its powerful physique to its heart's content. Along the way, the earth shook, the mountains shook, ancient trees snapped, and all beasts retreated. Even in the dark forest where danger lurked on every side and super-rank magical creatures frequently roamed, there were still very few creatures who were willing to provoke a creature as powerful as the Cyclops. It wasn't an easy thing to become enemies with such a big fellow. Han Shuo and Gilbert followed the tracks the Cyclops had left behind and caught up to him without much effort. In order to avoid attracting his attention, Han Shuo rode on Gilbert's dragon body and purposefully kept a large distance from the Cyclops. Following behind the Cyclops, Han Shuo paid close attention to his surroundings along the way. He actually discovered a few powerful presences that seemed to be interested in the Cyclops' movements. However, these presences also purposefully avoided the Cyclops and hid far away, unwilling to approach him. They only followed the tracks the Cyclops had left behind, seeming to have the same intentions as Han Shuo. When Han Shuo sensed these powerful presences, he immediately had Gilbert transform into his human form and used the art of the demonic ninth heavens to drag Gilbert along. This was to prevent Gilbert's enormous size from attracting the attention of these powerful creatures and becoming their prey. The three demons were placed in the surroundings, constantly on the lookout for danger that could descend at any time. Danger was everywhere in the dark forest, and Han Shuo had to be cautious. The Cyclops' towering body covered a distance of 5 to 6 meters with each step. After a period of turbulent travel, they finally entered a small mountain, Tana. Tanai's waterfall flowed freely, the trees were verdant, the small lake was clear, and the flowers were beautiful. There were a few strange rocks of various colors at the bottom of the clear river. Under the illumination of the sunlight, they shone with gentle light, causing the small river to shimmer with a phosphorescent light and accentuate the colors of the swimming fish. Strangely, when the Cyclops arrived at the valley, his previously reckless footsteps suddenly became cautious. He was very careful with each step, as if afraid of breaking the tranquility of the valley and alarming some powerful creature. Han Shuo, who was following the Cyclops from afar, hid in a crack on a cliff above the valley. He focused his gaze on the valley below, paying attention to the Cyclops' movements. The Cyclops arrived at the valley and carefully walked forward with light steps. As he walked, he untied the huge iron shovel on his back and walked straight towards the small lake where the waterfall fell. To Han Shuo's surprise, the lake was very deep. When the Cyclops' 10-meter-tall body fell into the lake water actually reached up to his shoulders. No matter how careful the Cyclops was, he still caused the water to ripple violently the moment he fell into the lake. The colorful fish fled in all directions in fright. The clear water around him gradually became murky, clearly affected by his footsteps. When the Cyclops waved his hands and used the iron shovel in his hands to work, the water in the lake became even more turbulent, and the clear surface of the lake became murkier and murkier. Huge rocks were sent out of the lake by the swing of the iron shovel. The Cyclops only needed a glance to distinguish the useful ones from the useless ones. Once the useful rocks were shoveled to the shore, he would immediately put them away and continue his work. The rocks dug out by the Cyclops were all covered in mud and silt. Han Shuo couldn't tell what kind of rocks they were, but since the Cyclops had taken a liking to them and made him secretly dig for them from thousands of kilometers away, they shouldn't be easily obtainable. Suddenly, a few powerful auras descended from different directions near the valley. They all locked their attention on the Cyclops, as if waiting for something. In an instant, Han Shuo's breathing calmed and his heartbeat slowed. He began to deliberately conceal his movements to avoid being discovered and causing unnecessary trouble. As a super-rank magical beast, Gilbert also had a miraculous method of concealing himself. Under Han Shua's gaze, he slowly dove into the flowing river of the lake and continued to sink until he reached the bottom of the swamp. As an evil race in the underground world, dark dragons had an innate talent for hiding in swamps. When Gilbert dove into the swamp, the flowing river water and mud obstructed his detection. Even Han Shua had to carefully sense his surroundings in order to vaguely find traces of him. After concealing his body, the three Yin demons carefully circled around the mountain valley under Han Shua's control. They slowly closed in on a few directions based on the auras they sensed. First, on the branch of a 7-meter-tall old tree stood an old woman with wrinkles all over her face, wearing a fiery red mage robe. From the magic insignia on her robe, Han Shua discovered that this old woman was actually a fire grand magus. Her gaze didn't linger on the Cyclops. Instead, she kept looking around, as if she was more interested in the valley itself. The second person was a middle-aged man with a handsome and robust appearance. His short golden hair stood on end, and he seemed to be in high spirits. He stopped behind a rock and focused his attention on the Cyclops. This middle-aged man had a strange aura that was actually somewhat similar to that of Dark Dragon Gilbert. When Han Shua used this feeling to carefully size up the middle-aged man, he suddenly realized that this middle-aged man should be an adult golden dragon. The third powerful creature landed in the shrubbery. It was a giant ape around 4 meters tall, with long silver fur and a pair of blood-red eyes. The nails at the ends of its slender arms were as sharp as knives, and there were even traces of blood on them, as if it had just torn apart a magical beast. The last person was a beautiful girl on a Pegasus, hovering in the air. Her teeth were white, her eyes were bright, and her skin was fair. Her beautiful and flawless face exuded a holy aura. She sat on the Pegasus, her slender body straight and her chest high and full. Her attention was also focused on the Cyclops. Through the prying eyes of the three Yin demons, Han Shua observed the 4 powerful beings hidden in the valley one by one. He couldn't help but be shocked. The dark forest was indeed a frightening place. A single Cyclops had attracted so many experts. 4 powerful creatures, 2 magical beasts, and 2 humans. The middle-aged man was, of course, the transformation of the super-rank magical beast Golden Dragon. Golden dragons were one of the strongest races of dragons, and their strength was publicly recognized. The middle-aged man's aura was as distant and heavy as a mountain. He was a powerful existence that had evolved at least 3 times, and definitely wasn't something that the little dark dragon who had just made her debut could compare to. The silver-eyed giant ape had a 4-meter-tall body. Just from the sharpness and coldness of its fingertips, Han Shua could keenly sense that they were stained with the blood of the powerful humans and beasts of the dark forest. The smell of blood permeated the air around it. Although he didn't know what kind of mutated monster it was, the powerful aura was definitely not weak. The wrinkled old woman was a fire grand magus. Her use of fire magic had already reached the pinnacle, and her strength was absolutely shocking and terrifying. Only the beautiful girl on the Pegasus was left. Han Shua couldn't judge her strength from her appearance, but the fact that she dared to appear here made Han Shua believe that she wasn't an easy opponent to deal with. If it wasn't for her extreme confidence in her own strength, she definitely wouldn't have appeared in this place. When Han Shua observed the 4 powerful creatures hiding in the dark through the Yin demons, he immediately communicated with Gilbert and told him to stop moving, in case he suffered an unexpected calamity. Roar! A loud roar suddenly rang out from the depths of the earth. The entire mountain valley shook, and the rocks on the cliffs shook and fell towards the small lake and river. This roar came from the depths of the earth and revealed boundless rage. The 4 powerful creatures watching in the dark all had different expressions when they heard this loud roar. The golden dragon and the beautiful girl on the Pegasus were both startled and seemed to be caught off guard. They didn't know what had happened, and their gazes moved away from the Cyclops to look towards the lake and river. The fire grand magus and the giant silver ape seemed to understand what had happened, and their expressions were filled with unconcealable excitement. After a loud roar, the temperature of the small valley, which was originally at a comfortable temperature, soared. The small lake and the cool river water suddenly became like a hot spring. Steam rose from them and gradually spread throughout the valley. The Cyclops obviously also knew what had happened. His originally gentle movements immediately sped up, as if he was hiding from something. He wanted to obtain more of the strange ores in the lake in the shortest amount of time possible, and frantically increased his pace of work. Following the loud rumbling sounds, Tanai's earth trembled and the lake and river seemed to split open from the ground. The temperature in the mountain valley rose steadily, and a few tender flowers were the first to wither, unable to withstand the heat. Afterwards, some shrubs and leaves dried up and cracked, gradually emitting thick smoke. Gilbert, who was hiding in the depths of the mud, suddenly felt the temperature of the water skyrocket. Even his strong body couldn't withstand it, and he almost turned into a roasted dragon. He couldn't help but want to leave the mud and escape. However, Han Shuo discovered that the 4 powerful creatures hidden in the surroundings had all raised their attention to the maximum. A thick killing intent permeated the valley, as if a great battle was about to begin at any moment. Han Shuo was greatly alarmed and hurriedly tried to stop the dark dragon with all his might, dispelling any thoughts of leaving the bottom of the river, lest he become the first target. When Han Shuo strongly tried to stop the dark dragon, he gave him the order to make use of the mud to leave the mountain valley first. This was to prevent him from becoming the target of everyone's attacks and ending up with a miserable death. Gilbert forcefully endured the danger of his body being burned and used his innate ability as a dark dragon to quickly move towards a place where the temperature was lower. He gradually left the area of the mountain valley and disappeared along the direction of the river. Not long after the dark dragon's body left, a terrifying roar sounded from the depths of the earth. It was as if the river and lake had been torn apart as underground fire erupted from the mountain valley. Magma bubbled out of the lake and river, the scorching heat making anyone feel extremely uncomfortable. In the middle of the river where the magma had gathered, a dozen or so fiery red stone giants that seemed to be made of magma slowly bent their bodies and stood up. These stone giants were as red as branding iron, and there seemed to be magma constantly churning within their bodies. Each of them was as tall as the giant silver ape, and magma flowed from their eyes, making them appear extremely terrifying and sinister. As the rolling magma spread, they charged towards the Cyclops. "It's the Flame Demon Battle General. It's here indeed!" The Fire Grand Magus couldn't help but exclaim in surprise and excitement. The giant silver ape had a sinister appearance, and a fierce light flickered in its blood-red eyes. At this moment, it was anxiously waving its 2 thick arms, as if planning to rush forward and fight, but also hesitating and waiting for something. The Golden Dragon and the Pegasus Girl seemed to only be targeting the Cyclops and obviously hadn't encountered such a situation. They stood there in a daze for a moment, rapidly thinking about something. Just as the 4 experts lurking in the dark were contemplating what to do, the flame demon generals made of lava stood up straight from the river and charged at the Cyclops. At this moment, the Cyclops didn't dare to stay here any longer. It picked up its shovel and once again took heavy steps, planning to leave the mountain valley as soon as possible and avoid the attacks of the flame demon battle generals. Sensing the rising temperature of the Tanai, the surrounding ground rapidly cracked and all the plants and flowers withered in an extremely short amount of time. The scorching heat from the depths of the earth made Han Shuo feel extremely uncomfortable. However, at this moment, Han Shuo instead closed his eyes and relaxed his body, as if he wanted to feel everything around him more clearly. After a while, Han Shuo opened his eyes. His eyes sparkled as he gazed at the mountain valley that had turned into a sea of fire. He murmured, "Yes, yes, the place of extreme fire should be down there." Chapter 235. Roar. Another terrifying roar came from the depths of the earth. The valley shook violently under the roar, and large pieces of rocks rolled down from the cliffs. The boulders that formed the waterfall creaked as if they would collapse at any time. An extremely powerful aura leaked out from the depths of the cracked ground. The impact of the powerful sound waves caused the withered trees to collapse and the ground to rapidly crack, forming huge ravines. Han Shua's 3 Yin demons didn't spread out to observe the surroundings at this time. They immediately retracted to his side and surveyed the surroundings. Their bodies had been stuck close to the rocks, but because of the scorching heat, the rocks were already as red as branding iron. Han Shua had no choice but to temporarily take to the air. Accompanied by the impact of the terrifying sound waves, the flame demon generals that walked out of the lava attacked the Cyclops without any hesitation. Streams of lava intertwined with each other as they flew out from the river of lava under the control of the flame demon generals, shooting towards the Cyclops' enormous body. 3 4-meter-tall flame demon generals walked out from the depths of the ground and blocked the Cyclops' path of retreat. They charged towards the Cyclops with blazing flames all over their bodies. The Cyclops' enormous body was twice the size of the flame demon generals. His green muscles were as hard as granite, and the huge iron shovel he held in his hands became his weapon of defense. Every swing of the shovel carried a violent force, bringing a violent gust of hot wind to the valley. Crackling sounds could be heard coming from the Cyclops' side. Every time he waved his shovel, a stream of lava would be slashed to the side. Blazing sparks flew everywhere as the red rocks wrapped in lava shattered and shot in all directions. Some of the withered trees and flowers in the surroundings were immediately set ablaze when they came into contact with the flaming rocks. The raging flames quickly spread and enveloped the entire valley in a sea of fire. A fiery red rock the size of a head was swung by the Cyclops, carrying a high temperature and emitting thick flames. It shattered from the lava and shot towards Han Shua. The raging flames carried a violent force, forcing Han Shua to retreat in a sorry state. With a rumble, the fiery rock the size of a head smashed into the hard rock that Han Shua had been standing on. Brilliant sparks flew everywhere as the blazing flames burned on the rock. It was so wondrous that one couldn't help but gasp in amazement. Firespark stone was an excellent material for forging weapons. Han Shua stared at the burning rock with bright eyes. He immediately recognized the wondrous rock from the blazing flames surrounding it. It was the Firespark stone, a material that cultivators greatly needed for forging weapons. He extended his left hand, and a ball of purple demonic fire rose from his palm like a ghost. It shrouded the Firespark stone with a bone-chilling aura. When the blazing heat and the bone-chilling aura came into contact, thick white smoke immediately rose, accompanied by a sizzling sound. Feeling the effects of the mystical glacial spellfire, Han Shua immediately circulated his magical yuan. The ball of purple flames that covered the Firespark stone jumped even more alluringly. Clouds of dense white mist rose from the Firespark stone. Under the assault of the bone-chilling aura, the blazing Firespark stone slowly extinguished and returned to calmness. Finally, it became an ordinary fiery red rock, sparkling with a resplendent red light like a ruby. When he saw that the flames on the Firespark stone had been extinguished, Han Shua's face lit up with joy. He immediately put the head-sized Firespark stone into his space ring, in case he needed to use it when he wanted to refine weapons in the future. No matter if it was a martial practitioner or a demonic practitioner, as long as they forged weapons, they couldn't do without some special flames. After all, some special materials could only be melted through high temperatures. This kind of Firespark stone was very miraculous. If it didn't come into contact with flames, it would be as ordinary as an ordinary rock, without the slightest bit of heat. However, as soon as the Firespark stone came into contact with the slightest spark, it would immediately burst into flames. Only when all the energy within the Firespark stone had been burned away would it become the most ordinary rock. During this process, the Firespark stone's enormous flame energy could melt all the materials for the cultivator, making it convenient for the next step of forging weapons. Han Shua was overjoyed when he collected the Firespark stone. His eyes sparkled as he began to search for more Firespark stones amidst the sparks in the sky. Then, a fiery dragon streaked across the sky and landed around the beautiful girl on the Pegasus. At the end of the fiery dragon's path was an even larger Firespark stone burning fiercely, instantly enveloping the entire area in a sea of flames. At this moment, the 4 powerhouses that had been hiding in the valley were all on high alert. Due to the chaos in the valley, traces of some people had been exposed. These powerhouses had all discovered each other's traces, but none of them made a move. To be able to appear in this valley without fear in the face of such a terrifying scene, they were either brainless or fearless powerhouses. Every powerful creature understood that before the situation was clear, they couldn't act rashly. Thus, even though they knew that there were other powerhouses hiding in the surroundings of the valley, they didn't dare act rashly. That larger fire's spark stone started burning fiercely. Waves of heat surged out, causing the Pegasus girl to sweat profusely. Her perky chest became even more alluring because of the sweat. Once a fire spark stone started burning, it would continue burning until there was no special method to stop it. As he watched the fire spark stone scatter its energy to its heart's content, Han Shuo hesitated for a moment before finally flying towards that area. "Who's there?" A light shout came from the Pegasus girl's mouth. She had obviously discovered Han Shuo's movements. Her long eyelashes fluttered as she looked cautiously at the rapidly approaching Han Shuo. "I don't have any ill intentions, I'm just picking up something." Han Shuo called out lowly, slowly revealing his tracks in coordination with his voice. He was deathly afraid that if he moved too quickly, he'd attract the girl's surprise attack. Han Shuo was also on his guard during this process. The demon's lair edge had already been summoned by his mind, and a Yin demon was secretly observing her every move and expression. As long as this girl showed any signs of hostility, Han Shuo would make the first move without any hesitation. Through the Yin demon's surveillance, Han Shuo discovered that this girl's crescent brows were creased in a beautiful frown. 2 streaks of sweat flowed down her smooth cheeks, past her neck and into the depths of her clothes. She urged the Pegasus to fly into the air, cautiously and suspiciously watching the approaching Han Shuo, but didn't make any unusual movements. That fire spark stone was to the left of this beautiful girl. Han Shuo was afraid that she'd misunderstand and so purposefully avoided her body. He took a detour and finally landed in the center of the raging flames, where the fire spark stone was. "I don't have any ill intentions." Lifting his head, Han Shuo looked deeply at the beautiful girl. His body that had been suspended in the air gradually dived downwards. His 2 palms faced each other and his magical yuan fiercely circulated. A ball of purple flames suddenly appeared in his palms, and a bone-chilling aura instantly spread from Han Shuo's palms. It was common knowledge on the entire continent that someone who could fly in the air was definitely a top-tier expert. When Han Shuo steadily flew over, his relaxed expression was immediately confirmed by the girl that he was an expert of the same level. Seeing that Han Shuo didn't have any ill intentions towards her, she didn't dare to provoke Han Shuo. She only looked curiously at Han Shuo with her beautiful eyes. When Han Shuo activated the mystical glacial spell fire and catalyzed the extremely cold purple flames, the surrounding temperature plummeted with Han Shuo at the center. Then, using the same method, Han Shuo gradually approached the fire spark stone with the purple flames in his hands. Thick smoke suddenly billowed as the 2 auras of extreme heat and extreme cold met. The collision of cold and heat once again created thick white smoke. The fire spark stone that had been burning fiercely started to extinguish piece by piece amidst the sizzling sounds. The spirited Pegasus beneath the beautiful girl wasn't used to the high temperature of the mountain valley and kept swaying restlessly. It was only because the girl repeatedly suppressed it that it didn't immediately leave the mountain valley. However, when Han Shuo used the purple flames, the surrounding temperature abruptly dropped with Han Shuo at the center. It was like a paradise in the scorching heat, creating a strong temptation for the spirited Pegasus beneath the girl. Without the girl's orders, the Pegasus approached Han Shuo of its own accord and flew greedily around Han Shuo, as if it was extremely reluctant to leave this place with such a suitable temperature. Han Shuo, who was focused on collecting the fire spark stone, saw the Pegasus and the girl's actions clearly through the Yin demon's observation. During this process, the beautiful girl tried to stop the Pegasus from approaching, but obviously didn't succeed. Raising his head, Han Shuo looked at the beautiful girl again and revealed a kind smile, indicating that he understood that she didn't approach him on her own accord and that she didn't have any ill intentions. "Thank you." The girl smiled sweetly like 100 flowers blooming, her voice soft and her tone sincere. "You're welcome." Han Shuo lowered his head and continued activating his demonic arts, planning to extinguish the fire's park stone as quickly as possible. He didn't take another look at the beautiful girl. With the existence of the 3 demons, even if Han Shuo was immersed in his work, he could still see Tanai's situation with a single glance. A few flame demon generals blocked the Cyclops' path and fought with the enormous Cyclops, attempting to keep the Cyclops in the mountain valley forever. However, the Cyclops, who was twice the size of the flame demon generals, also had an extremely tough body. He fiercely swung the huge iron shovel in his hand, chopping 2 flame demon generals into a few large pieces of rock that melted into the river with astonishing momentum. However, some of the scorching hot lava landed on the Cyclops' azure body, causing a large area to be charred black. The Cyclops also groaned in pain. One of its eyes was filled with anxiety as it looked towards the depths of the river from time to time, as if it was afraid that some powerful creature would suddenly break through the ground and walk out. The Fire Grand Magus was completely enveloped in a red magic shield. The old woman within the magic shield had an excited expression as her old eyes shone with light. Her attention was focused on the depths of the lava, as if she was waiting for something. The robust golden dragon was drenched from head to toe in the high temperature of Mountain Tanai. He slowly moved towards the outside of the mountain valley, as if he was preparing to take the opportunity to attack the Cyclops. The giant silver ape's shiny silver fur stood up like steel needles. A few sparks landed on its silver fur, but there wasn't a single trace of being charred. Its 2 steel claws clenched and relaxed repeatedly, and its blood-red eyes focused on the depths of the river of lava, but it didn't dare to approach. Roar! Another loud roar rang out, and the mountain valley really started to collapse. The earth was also torn apart. The underground creature was truly enraged now, as if blaming the flame demon generals for their incompetence. Fissures appeared in the ground, and even more lava burst out, shooting in all directions like a fountain. In an extremely short period of time, the beautiful scenery of the entire mountain valley no longer existed. An enormous creature over 10 meters tall stood up from the largest crack in the ground, along with the rolling lava. This enormous creature had a pointed head and a round lower body. Its entire body was red like hot iron, just like the flame demon generals. It was like a moving, burning volcano, and an enormous aura emanated from its body. The sky seemed to be set ablaze, and large patches of fiery clouds covered the sky above the mountain valley, causing the sky and earth to become one color, becoming a kingdom of flames. The heavens fell and the earth cracked, and the rocks of the mountain valley came crashing down. After this enormous creature walked out from the depths of the earth, its enormous body swayed backwards, causing even more lava to shoot out in all directions. It was truly a volcanic eruption. It's actually the Lord of the Flames. No wonder the flame demon generals have appeared. The beautiful girl beside Han Shuo cried out in surprise. She got off her Pegasus and shouted softly, "Leave this place, quickly!" The Pegasus that was infatuated with the temperature around Han Shuo was clearly very happy when it heard the girl's order. It flew up gracefully, planning to leave this place of trouble. However, the terrifying Lord of the Flames and its raging flames burned the earth. The fiery clouds in the sky weren't fake. They were actually under its control, and they completely covered the sky above the mountain valley. When the girl and the Pegasus took off, the fiery clouds ignited with intense flames, turning the sky into a sea of fire. No one would be able to escape from the sky. Furious killing intent spread from the Lord of the Flames to the surroundings. Every expert realized that this flame controller was indeed cruel to the guests who trespassed into its kingdom. Chapter 236. The Fire's Park Stone had finally been collected by Han Shuo. However, the entire mountain valley had been sealed off by fire. The 6 powerful beings, including Han Shuo, were all trapped within the mountain valley. In such an area where volcanoes erupted and lava sprayed everywhere, the 6 powerful beings with ulterior motives would all face the wrath of the Lord of the Flames. No one would be able to escape unscathed. After the fire-spark stone entered the space ring, the purple flames in Han Shua's palms extinguished and the surrounding temperature once again skyrocketed. The sweat on Han Shua's body converged like a small river and flowed downwards. The beautiful girl and the Pegasus had no choice but to descend to the ground in the face of the fiery clouds. They looked up at the fiery clouds and sighed helplessly. It looked like they didn't dare to rashly charge into the air above the burning mountain valley. The fire grand magus in the distance floated between Han Shua and the girl like the wind with a bright red magic shield. She smiled faintly. The three of us are all humans, so I think it'll be easier for us to communicate. It'll be easier for us to survive if we're united against a common enemy. What do you think? In the face of such terrifying danger, joining forces with the strong was indeed a good choice. Apart from the Lord of the Flames, Tanai also had the giant silver ape, the Cyclops, and the golden dragon. These three powerful beings were equally strong, but it was a pity that they weren't humans and weren't good partners to work with. Of course, only by working together will we be able to walk out of this fiery kingdom alive. Han Shuo naturally knew that he didn't have the confidence to deal with any of the Tanai experts by himself. This fire grand magus seemed to know what would happen. Although he didn't know what she was planning, he could at least wait and see. That's a good idea, Granny. The beautiful girl revealed a radiant smile and spoke in a clear and melodious voice. The fire grand magus seemed to have long since known that Han Shuo and the beautiful girl would agree. She lightly waved the magic staff in her left hand and chanted a profound incantation. With Han Shuo's group of three as the center, a house-sized barrier was instantly formed. This barrier was invisible and formless, but it isolated the high temperature. The surrounding lava that was erupting was blocked outside. After the old lady created the barrier, the magic shield on her body disappeared. She smiled at Han Shuo and the girl, and introduced herself. I'm Marceau from the Brute Merchant Alliance. I major in fire magic. Brian Han, from Lancelot Empire, a necromancer. Han Shuo replied. Sophie, I come from the Kasi Empire. I am a knight. He can be considered half an incompetent summoner. The beautiful Pegasus girl replied simply. As soon as she finished speaking, she softly chanted a spell, and the Pegasus she had been riding magically disappeared without a trace. The old lady Marceau and the girl called Sophie seemed to have heard of each other's names. When the two of them introduced themselves, the other revealed a surprised expression. Only Han Shuo was unknown. Marceau and Sophie clearly hadn't heard of Han Shuo before, and both looked at Han Shuo with some confusion. Anyone who could fly in the air and appear here was definitely not a nameless person. As a powerful practitioner of necromancy magic, if there was such a person in the Lancelot Empire, they would definitely have heard of him. Therefore, when Marceau and Sophie realized that they hadn't heard of Han Shuo's name, they thought that Han Shuo had given them a fake name. Faced with the two's confusion, Han Shuo shrugged his shoulders and explained with a wry smile, I'm telling the truth. I've only just started my career, so it's normal that I'm not well known. There's nothing strange about it. Roar. The Lord of the Flames' enormous roar reverberated throughout the valley. Accompanied by terrifying sound waves, the Lord of the Flames moved its enormous body and chased after the Cyclops. Streaks of scorching flames danced wildly like ribbons, and the violent heat caused the air to crackle. The flames mixed with magma entangled the Cyclops under the Lord of the Flames' control, causing the Cyclops to dodge in all directions. It was obvious that it was no match for the Lord of the Flames. The Golden Dragon's target should have been the Cyclops, but at this moment, he realized that he was also facing great danger. He seemed to have given up on the idea of immediately dealing with the Cyclops. He stood at the entrance of the Valley of Fire, as if pondering how to leave. The giant silver ape pounded its chest and roared loudly. Its body, which had been standing still all this time, suddenly moved. Like a bolt of silver lightning, it tore through the air and shot towards the Lord of the Flames who was chasing after the Cyclops. In the air, it intertwined its two sharp claws in front of its chest and danced. A few cold glints that looked like swords shot out from its claws. The few flame demon generals in the surroundings were swept by the streaks of cold light, and their bodies suddenly cracked with loud crackling sounds as they quickly melted into the magma. Han Shuo couldn't help but pale with fright when he saw this scene through the Yin demons. He didn't know what kind of mutated magical beast this giant silver ape was, but it had such terrifying destructive power. The two iron claws were actually able to shoot out sword light attacks, as if they possessed the great power to tear through everything. Before the flame demon general, who was as tall and had a body as hot as iron, could even get close to it, it was already smashed into pieces by the iron claws. The giant silver ape's strength is very terrifying. I've seen it tear apart 3 twin-headed dragons at once. It should be a mutated super-rank magical beast. Its target is the Lord of the Flames. I've observed it for a while, and discovered that it's come to the valley 3 times. Each time, it didn't dare to provoke the Lord of the Flames. This time, it might really be going against it. Old Hag Marceau had actually been paying attention to the commotion in the distance as she suddenly spoke. Han Shuo stared blankly for a moment, then realized that Marceau hadn't come by chance like him. She must have observed for a long time before choosing to participate in the chaos. He didn't know what she was planning. Roar! An explosive roar erupted from where the golden dragon was. Amidst the dazzling golden light, a giant golden dragon that was 15 to 16 meters long suddenly revealed itself. After the golden dragon transformed, its slender body shook, and a terrifying dragon's breath exploded in front of it. The red rocks that sealed the valley suddenly exploded, and a 5 to 6 meter wide passageway appeared in the valley that had been blocked by the Lord of the Flames. The golden dragon was one of the dragons with the most shocking battle prowess, and its physical body possessed the strongest offensive and defensive abilities. After transforming, the golden dragon was even more ferocious and wild, and had always been synonymous with strength and power. Even the valley that had been sealed by the Lord of the Flames flint was forcefully blasted open by its fierce dragon's breath. This Lord of the Flames is a super-rank magical beast that has evolved 4 times, while this golden dragon has only evolved 3 times. It's a wise decision for it to give up on seeking revenge against the Cyclops and leave the valley for now. Fire Grand Magus Marceau calmly explained to Han Shuo and Sophie as she watched the commotion in the distance. Roar! The Lord of the Flames let out an earth-shattering howl. It naturally thought that the golden dragon's breath was a provocation, and let out a loud howl to vent the anger in its heart. In that moment, the flowing lava and the flaming clouds in the sky seemed to be under the Lord of the Flames' control as they all gathered towards the passageway that the golden dragon had blasted open. Before the golden dragon could leave the valley, the passageway that had just been blasted open was once again blocked by lava, flames, and flaming clouds. This time, the passageway was even tighter than last time. The golden dragon was completely enraged in that moment. As one of the most prideful of super-rank magical beasts, the golden dragon had already given the Lord of the Flames a lot of face by attempting to leave the valley. He hadn't thought that this rank 4 Lord of the Flames would actually want to burn everything with flames. This was intolerable to the golden dragon. A frightening dragon's roar rang out from the golden dragon's enormous mouth. The golden dragon had originally planned on leaving the valley, but temporarily gave up on his original goal. He didn't pay attention to the Cyclops and actually charged towards the Lord of the Flames. The golden dragon swung his tail wildly as he flew, but the flaming rocks were unable to leave even the slightest mark on his golden body. At the same time, Fire Grand Magus Marceau suddenly cheered in joy and said excitedly, "Chance, our chance has finally come." Turning his head to glance at Marceau, Han Shuo said calmly, "I think you should tell us your plan and intentions now. Otherwise, the 2 of us wouldn't be following you in a daze." The underground world of the Lord of the Flames is an extremely mystical existence. It's because of this mystical existence that the Lord of the Flames was able to evolve 4 times. I've researched fire magic for many years and discovered that there's a strange fire attribute energy in that place. This energy is completely different from the fire element and is even more mysterious. That mystical place not only created a grade 4 Lord of the Flames, but also nurtured a mysterious fire lotus and many strange rocks. I only discovered it by chance. Since the Lord of the Flames is fighting outside, I can use my control over fire magic to bring you two into that underground world and take the opportunity to take away some of the mystical things inside. What do you think? Marceau looked extremely anxious as she quickly explained to the two. Alright. Han Shuo answered crisply without the slightest hesitation. This fire archmage named Marceau was definitely a powerful person. She was actually able to discover this place of extreme fire and understand that there was an element of fire that was different from the fire element within. It looked like she'd put in a lot of effort into this place of extreme fire. Although fire elemental energy and fire element were both existences of the fire attribute, they were two completely different types of energy. Any mage in this world, as long as they had mental strength, could communicate with fire elemental energy and cast fire magic anywhere. As a magical element, the fire element existed in every corner of this world. A fire mage could use their connection with the fire element to release fire magic of varying power depending on the strength of their mental strength. However, the element of fire didn't exist in every place. It only existed in some naturally mystical places between the heavens and the earth. Only a place that coincided with the trajectory of the heavens and the earth would form a natural treasure ground. Only after thousands of years of evolution would it be possible to form the element of fire in some fiery places. Among them, the place of extreme fire was undoubtedly the best place to nurture the element of fire. Compared to the ubiquitous fire element, the element of fire was much rarer. If it was refined by some practitioners who knew how to use it, it could display even more mysterious and unfathomable power. The Lord of the Flames had always been a magical beast that was extremely difficult to evolve. However, this Lord of the Flames had directly evolved 4 times after finding this place of extreme fire, becoming a super ferocious magical beast of fire. If this Lord of the Flames evolved one more time, it would become a rank 5 Emperor of the Flames, possessing the strength and divine power of a demigod. If the Emperor of the Flames could break through to rank 5, it would surpass the category of magical beasts and become a fire god with a divine spark, possessing true divine power and powerful control. Han Shuo understood that this was an opportunity. No matter what, he had to get to the place of extreme fire and see if there was a chance to refine the fire elite zombie here in the future. The 5 elemental zombies were Han Shuo's goal. Adding this place of extreme fire, then there was only the place of extreme metal that hadn't been discovered yet. Only when all 5 elemental zombies were gathered would they be able to unleash the destructive effect of the formation. The beautiful young lady Sophie, whose target this time should be the Cyclops, was obviously a bit hesitant towards Marceau's suggestion. She blanked out for a while, and finally nodded lightly under Marceau's anxious gaze, agreeing to Marceau's suggestion. Alright, let's take advantage of their battle to quickly reach the underground kingdom of the Lord of the Flames. Seeing that Sophie had agreed, Fire Grand Magus Marceau's face lit up with joy and she hurriedly chanted a magical incantation. Suddenly, the invisible magical boundary that enveloped Han Shuo's group began to emit sparks, as if it had the ability to absorb the fire element. As the sparks flew, the extremely dense fire element in the surroundings was rapidly sucked into the boundary. The boundary that had absorbed a large amount of fire element continuously tightened bit by bit, blossoming with a brilliant red light. The temperature inside also rose steadily until the temperature inside the boundary rose to around 40 degrees and became 3 to 4 meters wide. Only then did the temperature rise and space shrink stop. Let's go! Fire Grand Magus Marceau called out softly. The boundary brought the 3 of them around the battle between the enormous creatures and suddenly landed in the fiery crack on the ground that was spewing lava. Chapter 237. The temperature within the boundary stopped at around 40 degrees. The magma in the cracks in the ground was blocked outside by the boundary and didn't affect Han Shuo and the other 2 inside. Marceau was obviously very strained during this process. The boundary was filled with a large amount of magical elements, which meant that she had expended a lot of mental strength to control the movement of the boundary. After the entire boundary had shrunk to 3 to 4 meters, it became a bit crowded. In addition, the temperature inside was at 40 degrees. Although it didn't burn everything like the outside, it still made people feel wet and uncomfortable. However, Han Shua's body could easily handle this level of temperature. Even if he didn't activate his magical yuan to resist it, Han Shua didn't lie down with his body drenched in sweat. Instead, he used this rare free time to sit down and meditate to recover the magical yuan he had just expended. The beautiful female knight, Sophie, was wearing tight clothes that stuck to her beautiful body. Her clothes were drenched in sweat, as if she had just finished bathing and walked out of the bath, accentuating the curves of her body. Due to the high temperature, fragrant sweat flowed all over her body, and her breathing was uneven. She kept waving her hands to fan herself, as if she wanted to cool herself. Fire Grand Magus Marceau was completely focused on controlling the boundary. She was as focused as Han Shua. The wrinkles on her face were like ravines, and they were also filled with sweat. They couldn't help but slowly flow down her body due to the influence of gravity. The two Yin demons were placed in the valley and observed everything that happened outside, so that Han Shua could understand the situation above at any time and make accurate decisions. After falling into the cracks in the magma, the boundary sunk all the way down. The surrounding flames burned fiercely, and some of the magma exploded in all directions with a loud rumble that shook the earth and mountains. When the magma hit the surface of the boundary, beautiful sparks appeared, presenting a beautiful scene of a sea of fire. Unfortunately, of the three people in the boundary, Han Shua and Marceau were too focused to pay attention to the scenery around them. Female Knight Sophie was wet all over and uncomfortable, and there was also a ball of anxious flames burning in her heart. Naturally, she didn't have the mind to pay attention to the beautiful scenery around her. Amidst the blazing and gorgeous sparks, the three of them gradually sank along with the barrier. Among them, Fire Grand Magus Marceau controlled the boundary to shift its direction and slowly descend into the depths of the Earth's core. She seemed to be familiar with the situation here. Finally, the moving boundary suddenly came to a halt. Han Shua instantly opened his eyes and sized up the scenery around him with glistening eyes. In the shortest amount of time possible, he imprinted the scenery around him into his mind. The first thing that came into view was a wide lake of fire. It was like a burning sun, emitting blazing light and heat. The surging magma was in the form of a fire dragon pillar, rising up from the fire lake one after another. It was probably because of the Flame Lord's power that it was so ferocious. Around the wide lake of fire, there were stone walls that radiated fiery light. These stone walls were as red as soldering iron, emitting a scorching heat. The glaring red light filled the surroundings, causing this area to become a huge space of flames. In the middle of the fire lake, a strange fire lotus blossomed mysteriously in the boiling magma of the fire lake. It flickered with a bewitching red light and swayed along with the rolling fire lake. This posture seemed to possess a soul-stirring beauty. Han Shua and the other two were still enveloped by the boundary. They floated at the entrance of a cave in the surrounding stone walls, no longer suffering from the damage of the magma and flames. Fire-spark stone, fire sun crystal, red agate, Han Shua exclaimed in surprise. He discovered that there were a few magical stones scattered not far from the entrance of the cave. They were all treasures for refining fire-attributed weapons. These stones were of excellent quality and could be completely smelted into high-quality fire-attributed flying swords, or directly absorbed by fire-attributed practitioners to improve their skills. This area is very mysterious. It contains a strange fire power, and the surrounding stones are very precious. If you embed them in a magic staff, it will definitely have a great effect on a fire-attributed mage. Grand Magus Marceau said while dripping hot sweat. She didn't need to explain much. As a demonic cultivator, Han Shua could recognize many strange stones based on Chu Kanglin's memories. He understood that these strange stones had different uses, and each one could play a great role. Open the boundary, I'm going to leave and collect some. Han Shua was overjoyed as he spoke with a calm expression. Marceau was stunned. She hesitated for a moment before kindly reminding him, the temperature outside the barrier is several times higher than inside. I think that once you leave the barrier, you will be cooked by the high temperature. I advise you not to take the risk. No problem, I think I can withstand it. Han Shuo activated his magical yuan and a pulsating ball of purple flames formed in his left palm. A gust of cold air instantly blew through the 40-degree hot boundary. Sophie and Marceau, who were sweating profusely, couldn't help but shiver. The flowing sweat suddenly stopped, giving them an icy chill. What magic is this? Fire Grand Magus Marceau couldn't help but cry out involuntarily when she saw a ball of purple flames appear in Han Shuo's palm. The high temperature within the boundary was immediately dispelled, and the extremely hot area almost turned into an ice cave. Hee, it's just a strange martial technique. Don't worry, I think I can withstand the high temperature outside. Han Shuo smiled slightly as he held the pulsating ball of purple flames and looked confidently at Marceau. I think you're right. Marceau nodded and then said, Pay attention, when I count to 3, I'll send you out of the boundary. Prepare yourself. Taking a deep breath, Han Shuo activated his magical yuan. His fingers began to move nimbly, and balls of purple flames flashed from his fingertips. When Marceau counted to 3, the boundary where Han Shuo was at seemed to have been sliced open by a knife, and the space between the two of them was directly removed. In an instant, the high temperature hit them head-on. The scorching wave of fire broke through the boundary's obstruction and instantly enveloped Han Shuo's entire body. Without Marceau's control, the boundary that blocked the high temperature shattered like an eggshell. Not only did it lose the ability to block the heat wave, but it also lost the ability to remain in the air. The rock where Han Shuo's foot landed was scorching red. As long as his foot landed, the sole of Han Shuo's foot would be charred black in an instant. When he activated his magical yuan to cast the mystical glacial spell fire, he naturally didn't forget to cast the art of the demonic ninth heavens. Just as Han Shuo's foot was about to land on the flint, he suddenly stopped in midair and didn't move. The Yin demon that had accompanied Han Shuo in the boundary was immediately placed behind him, constantly paying attention to Marceau and Sophie's movements. Han Shuo himself didn't waste a single moment. He used the extreme cold of the mystical glacial spellfire to emit thick white smoke from his body and began to carry out some secret plans. After Han Shuo landed, Sophie and Marceau looked at Han Shuo's actions in amazement. They were obviously very surprised by Han Shuo's actions. However, when the extreme cold on Han Shuo's body met the high temperature, his body was immediately covered in thick white smoke. The two women could no longer see Han Shuo's figure clearly. The most mystical thing in this area should be the fire lotus in the center of the fire lake. He's gone to collect rocks to forge weapons, so let's go pluck that fire lotus. Fire Grand Magus Marceau didn't seem to care about the unknown rocks in the surroundings, or perhaps it was because she didn't know what magical effects those rocks had. She only focused her attention on the fire lotus. This fire lotus had 10 or so red, translucent leaves the size of palm leaf fans. They were as clear as jade, and there was a strange red light circulating within the veins of each leaf, as if they were nurturing a life of fire. This fire lotus was very eye-catching in the middle of the blazing fire lake, giving off a stunning beauty. Fire Grand Magus Marceau and Sophie seemed to be completely attracted by the strange lotus. The two stared at the fire lotus with fascination, activating the magic boundary and slowly approaching the fire lotus together. Within the thick white smoke, Han Shuo didn't activate his magic to collect the fire spirit stones. Instead, he quickly dug a large hole and dripped his own blood essence into it. His eyes shone with a divine light as he looked at the fire lotus from time to time. His expression was incomparably calm, as if he was rapidly thinking about what to set up. Han Shuo had heard Marceau's description before coming down and understood that a fire lotus had been nurtured in the place of extreme fire, so he already had his own plans. No matter what, this fire lotus couldn't be obtained by Marceau and Sophie. As a treasure nurtured in the place of extreme fire, the fire lotus had the miraculous effect of directly wrapping around zombies and turning them into a fire elite zombie. Depending on how long the place of extreme fire had been formed, as well as some special opportunities, treasures of the 5 elements could be nurtured. The places of extreme earth, extreme wood, and the Valley of Sunshine's extreme water that Han Shuo had discovered hadn't produced any treasures, perhaps because they'd been formed for too long, or perhaps because there hadn't been any suitable opportunities. However, this place of extreme fire might have already existed for tens of thousands of years. After accumulating all sorts of energy over the years, in addition to the existence of the Lord of the Flames, it had actually successfully nurtured the fire lotus. As a treasure of the place of extreme fire, the fire lotus had grown for tens of thousands of years and absorbed all sorts of fire elemental energy, becoming a wondrous treasure. With the existence of the fire lotus, Han Shuo didn't need to waste a huge amount of time to gather all sorts of materials. He could directly use a secret technique to form a large formation in the place of extreme fire, then use his blood essence to activate the formation and throw a zombie into the fire lotus. Based on the nutrients that the fire lotus had absorbed over tens of thousands of years and the dense fire elemental energy in the place of extreme fire, it would directly help an ordinary zombie evolve into a fire elite zombie. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Han Shuo absolutely wouldn't allow Marceau to take the fire lotus. After he left the boundary, he had already started to set everything up. As Marceau controlled the boundary and slowly approached the fire lotus, Han Shuo turned into a thick cloud of white mist and shuttled through the caves around the fiery red rock walls. In the eyes of Marceau and Han Shuo was taking the opportunity to collect some strange ores in the surroundings. What they didn't know was that under the cover of the thick smoke, Han Shuo had already quickly and successfully excavated the formation I needed to refine the fire elite zombie. Although there was the fire lotus, there weren't any other materials to refine the fire elite zombie. Han Shuo's blood essence had completely replaced the practice between the formation eyes. Fortunately, Han Shuo had swallowed a 300-year-old blood essence grass and converted enough blood essence. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have been able to successfully use the large formation this time. After Han Shuo walked around the surrounding rock walls and successfully excavated the formation eye, he immediately chanted an incantation and summoned the little skull from a distant plane. Hurry up and bring a zombie that you approve of. He'll receive the same treatment as the Earth Elite zombie. Han Shuo passed on an order. Without waiting for the little skull to nod in understanding, he sent the little skull back to a distant plane. Then, purple flames danced between Han Shuo's hands as he activated his magical yuan. In the direction where the little skull had been standing, the purple flames danced in Han Shuo's hands, creating a suitable temperature for that area. The little skull's body was purely made of sparkling white bones. After many times of forging and tempering, Han Shuo had sufficient confidence in the little skull's body's toughness. He knew that this level of high temperature wouldn't affect him at all. However, if an ordinary zombie suddenly appeared in such a place, it would definitely be burned to a painful state by the high temperature. It was hard to say whether it would be directly burned to death. Therefore, in order to successfully refine the fire elite zombie, Han Shuo had no choice but to make preparations in advance, lest he be roasted to death by the high temperature once he fell into this space. An urgent call came through the little skull from an infinitely distant plane. When Han Shuo received this call, he immediately chanted an incantation. Then, in the area of suitable temperature created by magical yuan, the little skull appeared in front of Han Shuo with an incomparably large zombie warrior in his hand. Perhaps the little skull sensed Han Shuo's anxiousness, but he didn't have time to search in his haste and casually grabbed a zombie warrior with an unusually large head. "All right, it's you." Time was of the essence. Han Shuo had already set up everything. Seeing that Marceau and the little skull were already close to the fire lotus, he didn't have time to be picky. He grabbed the big-headed zombie and rushed towards the central fire lake. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.